Joining us now is friend of the show, Chuck Modiano, and he was a justice journalist and sports writer for Deadspin. He recently been reporting extensively on the hashtag Stop Asian Hate protest, as well as the hashtag Free Haiti protest. Chuck, thank you so much for joining us again, man. How are you on this morning, all things considered?
Hey, great to be here. If you don't care about how people feel because you're going to tell the truth, I love it. I love it.
Absolutely, man. That's what we have to do, man. We were talking about, obviously, the breaking news this morning, 10 people dead in Boulder, Colorado. And then we were just thinking about the fact that most of the families here in Atlanta have not even had a chance to bury their dead from less than a week ago, the mass shooting here, which sparked protests across the country in solidarity with Asian Americans. You've been covering that on your side of the country. Tell us about what you've seen.
Sure. Well, there have been a number of protests this Saturday, but the first one was on Wednesday in D.C., and that was solidarity against white supremacy. And that was organized by the Total Liberation Collective. And I think it's key is that solidarity against white supremacy is that, you know, in D.C., it's been a lot about solidarity. The post-George Floyd protests have never ended. And I always lead with that. 10 months later. So that is still happening. So, you know, what we saw on Wednesday night is the community coming together. And there were, I believe, 3 demands. One was to end the Asian liaison unit as far as police. That's part of a defund MPD. And then it was teaching about Asian American violence in schools, teaching Black history in schools, and trying to unite against not just hate, but that the police who will take someone unscathed, unscratched to safety while there are 8 victims.
Yeah. We have some footage actually of yours that you used at a protest, that you captured rather at a protest. I want us to take a look at that real quick. Let's run that footage.
Fuck white supremacy! Fuck white supremacy! Fuck white supremacy! Fuck white supremacy!
We're out here because people who look like me are being killed. People who also share our siblings, our brown, black, indigenous siblings are also being killed.
We're angry at the excuses made for a white supremacist who murdered our siblings and the inability of this country to decide if that slaughter of 6 Asian women was racially motivated.
Arrested a white supremacist who killed 8 people last night without so much as a scratch. And in the same breath, they murder Brianna, Tamir, George, Dion, and Karan for nothing.
Justice for Karan!
Justice for Karan!
For too long, we've been depending on police to protect us, and they're not doing their job, so we gotta protect ourselves.
Fuck the cops, fuck MPD, fuck this bullshit Asian liaison unit.
2021 is a direct result of the anti-Asian and anti-Chinese and anti-Vietnamese and anti-Korean and xenophobic in general, writ large, rhetoric that has been spewed by the last administration and does not seem to be stopped by the current administration.
On the surface, Biden says that he condemns anti-Asian hate, but his policies abroad...
We pay tax dollars that kill people abroad, our people that look just like me.
Racism and hate crimes that Asian Americans experience don't happen in a vacuum. They're directly linked to U.S. imperialism, and that's something that we need to name.
We demand the full decriminalization of sex work.
This collective power is what we need to keep this energy going. We cannot keep letting white supremacy be a wall to everything we can achieve towards liberation.
Chuck, I want to ask you about that specifically. I especially at the very beginning of the clip, one of the things the gentleman said was that 6 of the 8 people killed were Asian women, and we're having a debate in this country over whether or not it was race-based. Talk about that.
I mean, what we're talking about is a long history of mass white denial, that we're always looking for a reason why something isn't racist. Oh, it's almost a disease. What could it possibly be besides racism? And when that happens in the worst scenario, when there are dead bodies, when there are grieving people, then I believe the person I interviewed really communicated the insult, the hurt that brings. Why do you have to prove the most obvious? But that is America, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely. Why do we have to prove the most obvious? Rebecca, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
What was interesting to me when I saw that particular video, it almost looks like just a difference, right? We have Asian Americans who are out there protesting. And what one of them said was that, hey, police officers don't even care about us, right? Now we're having that conversation, but with a different group of people and a different demographic. So it's interesting to see and hear that they too are having these issues. And I wonder now that they're speaking up on it. And not to say that, you know, when Black folks say it, they aren't heard, but that's true. When Black folks say it, we've been screaming it for years. But I wonder if, since now this conversation is being had by Asian Americans, is that going to be something that heightens the us talking about, you know, not abolishing the police, but what is it? What's the term? It's like 10,000 terms. Defunding the police. But yes, here we are with it. And I wonder, is that going to be a thing? Or, you know, are we going to start, you know, white supremacy when it comes against it's, you know what it is? It's white folks against everybody. That's what it is here in America. It is white folks against everyone. But I wanted you to speak more to that young man talking about, you know, how they don't even feel protected by police.
Well, I hope the outcome is what you just said, that there will be unity against police. I do want to say I did interview not just new people, but people who've actually have been out there for the last 10 months as well. So there has probably been a little more solidarity that has been visible to the outside in D.C. D.C. has been a Black-led multiracial protest from the start, going back to George Floyd. And here you are seeing some commonality. But the woman who spoke also did an interview about when she spoke to her mother. And her mother said, but we need police to keep us safe. And she said, no, we don't need police to keep us safe. They don't keep us safe. And she talked about a sort of generational tug and pull that I think is going on across racial lines everywhere.
And that's the thing. It is trying to help people to understand that nuance right there, because there's a generation of people who look at the police. You know what? I could help simplify this. It's a generation of people who've actually grown up and watch nonstop cop propaganda on television all day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like love everybody in my family, but all the elders in my family sitting there watching NCIS, sitting there CIS, sitting there watching all these shows that are cop based that always sow these narratives that cops come into our community to protect us. But in this instance, the younger generation is trying to communicate to them, hey, I need you to understand the cops have not been protecting us. The cops have been complicit with this system in one way or the other. And in this very specific case, they're complicit with this white supremacist violence in that they're trying to coddle it and protect it and cover for it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why the demand number one was to get rid of the Asian liaison unit in Washington, D.C. that is increased their control in D.C. and other Asian American communities after this happened. So you have this almost inverse reaction than what the people want. So, that's really important. That's an important point you make.
Let's shift gears, Rebecca.
Yeah, let's take it to another protest that's happening in D.C. that you've been covering, Chuck.
I do want to add one thing. Can I add one piece here?
Yes.
That what I think was really distinctive about this particular protest than we hear in the mainstream. We've heard the narrative, which is true, that Trump's rhetoric, Trump saying Kung flu and all other anti-Chinese rhetoric has created this toxic environment that is getting Asians hurt. That is all true. Yes. But what we also heard was about the foreign policies and imperialism that are going on, not just in Trump administration, but the Biden administration. And we had heard that over and over, but we don't necessarily hear that angle on the news. So I think we have to tell a bigger global picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's, that's important that that's happening in both administrations. It's not just something that happened within the Trump administration. And these communities are not afraid to call Biden out on that.
Yeah.
And one of those communities that you've been covering once again is Haiti, the Haitian community, which you've been covering their protests. And I want us to take a look at some of the footage that you got from those Haitian protests that are happening in DC.
There are massive demonstrations in Haiti, and because those demonstrations, Haiti or any place else, are a stand against U.S. imperialism, against Western imperialism, they don't report it. They don't really want us to know that what they're doing is facilitating something that's against, adverse to the will of the people.
So in Haiti right now, there is an extremely unpopular and wildly corrupt president whose term expired on February 7th, 2021, and who is remaining past his term because he has support from the United States government, who basically is propping him up there, and also other groups of states and organizations, including the Organization of American States, in front of whose building we're standing right now.
They are leaving Haiti because U.S. policies have been depleting the nation. Because U.S. policies keeping the people in bondage. And we want freedom, and we want it now.
What people are so angry and upset about is that this dictator is basically selling all the assets of Haiti to the highest bidder so he can personally profit from it.
That Biden is setting up the most violent administration in Haiti that is killing people on the street.
Murders and deaths that are happening. So there's a dire, grave situation happening in Haiti, but it is being backed by the U.S. And ironically, this is the same country that is going around pushing for voters' rights. And they're not acknowledging the rights of Haitian voters.
Yes. The very thing that President Biden was complaining about Donald Trump and not following the Constitution and leaving as the Constitution prescribed is what he himself is guilty of supporting inside of Haiti. And for that reason is why we're here demonstrating today. Making sure and think that we're so hoodwinked that the people aren't paying attention to what's going on. So we're out here to make sure they know that we're paying attention and that we support the people of Haiti and that we are for the United States and the so-called UN peacekeeping troops to get the hell out of Haiti. Rain or shine. Rain or shine.
That's powerful.
That's a very powerful protest, and I love how again they talked about imperialism. They talked about the dictatorship that Jovenel Moïse is out there doing in Haiti, because it's important that they're out there to protest that and make sure that they know that everyone else knows that we know that U.S. is definitely involved in the backing of this dictatorship. Yeah. So tell me, when you went out there, Chuck, what was the sense that you got out there? Because it's very interesting. A lot of people don't know there are Haitians in D.C. and we have solidarity with other Black people and people in D.C. So can you talk about that?
Sure. Well, let me start with the protest was organized by Black Alliance for Peace, who've been in D.C. for a long time, particularly when you're talking about imperialism and anti-war. So if people want to get down to the nitty-gritty of facts, definitely check them out. So what's really interesting to me is that there was no mainstream media there. There was no Washington Post. There was nobody. And, that's where I try to go out and get the real story. And I'm learning as we're moving forward. But what's so interesting to me is what one gentleman mentioned is the very same thing that we were talking about Trump, this rogue dictator who won't leave office according to the Constitution. Jovenel Moïse is doing the very same thing, and the U.S. is backing him, and Joe Biden is backing him. So are we against dictators not leaving? Or are we for it? So it's very similar to the hypocrisy of the kids in cages. Do we care about it during Trump? Or do we care about it during Biden? What are the principles we have? So I think we have to start there and remove all hypocrisy, because Black Alliance for Police exposed that.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say I was going to say that hypocrisy is so transparent. Like if it was evil during Donald Trump's administration, it's evil right now. Go ahead, Rebecca.
No, that's exactly what it is. We have Joe Biden, who in 2019, before he took office, before he even won, he ran on the campaign of, okay, hey, we need to definitely elevate Haiti. Haiti has been in trouble. Haiti has been in turmoil when it comes to their government, and it's the people that need to be heard. He tweeted out on Twitter that he said if he becomes president, he will start listening to the people, find out how he can get them assistance. So Haiti was really betting on Joe Biden becoming president, only for him, when he did get in office, to back Jovenel Moïse to stick in office against the people's wishes there.
Right.
So they went out and made sure when they're protesting, because now they got social media, now they have voices, they made sure that they held up that tweet of Joe Biden saying that he wanted to help Haiti back in 2019. And when he becomes president, he will assist them. So they have been out there and making sure that they too know that Joe Biden and Donald Trump, to them, are the same. He is not a leader to be compared to Dessalines or former good leaders that were in Haiti. He is not that. He would never be that. And that's when they came to figure out, and that's why they're in the streets, and they're saying, we don't need U.S. assistance if it's going to look like this.
Brother Chuck, I want you to get I was going to actually get the last word.
No, you got it. You got it. Go ahead.
No, I actually want, that's what I was going to say. I want you to get a couple more words in here, and then then tell the people how they can support your work.
Well, we heard Rebecca's point, over and over about that hypocrisy. So when we were hearing there's not a big difference between the two, that's a very global imperialistic commentary. So we heard that over and over, and we have to look at that. What was interesting to me is that when I was covering Trump rallies from the first day of the protest against Trump, and on the 9th day of Trump's presidency, there were massive protests against his immigration policy, against his Muslim ban, thousands in the street. And nobody told me it was too soon. Nobody said that to me. But here, it's too soon. It's too early. Well, every day that goes by, if people are being deported or if people are being killed in Haiti, well, I don't know if it's too soon. Let's talk about it now. And it wasn't too soon with Trump. So I'll leave it there. Check out Black Alliance for Peace for anyone who wants to know the details. And I'm at ChuckMoD1 on Twitter. And really appreciate you giving the platform to talk about imperialism, because we know that's not popular in media.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's not popular. Go ahead, Becca.
No, and thank you so much, Chuck. I really wanted to thank you for that, because the information is missing in mainstream media. And for me being a Haitian, I really see that. And your videos being some of the first videos that I've seen here in America, where people actually are saying what's happening and having voices. I respect you for that. Keep doing what you're doing.